Feel the power.
Oh, I can feel it.
Our moment of triumph approaches. It's
Rock Talk.
This Throwback Thursday episode of Grok Talk was originally recorded on February 15th, 2014. Our guests were LFGC President Richard Olson, Dr. Julianne Cooper, and Dr. Betsy McCaughey. The ads and promos you hear were running regularly in early to mid-2014. Segment breaks have been moved or edited to fit our 2016 programming format.
He tried to make us believe he was a fiscal conservative. But State Senator Dave Booten has been deceiving New Hampshire taxpayers. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, he claimed to be one of us, pretending to blend in, but all along, voting like a liberal Democrat. He voted to raise your gas tax by another 23%, taking a bigger bite out of our wallets every time we're at the pump. And oh, how he drooled at the opportunity to vote to expand Obamacare, which will result in higher taxes and longer wait times in the emergency room. And now the Senate wants to pass a bill to prevent us from criticizing Senator Booten's vote? Call Senator Booten at 603-203-5391 and tell him that we're on to his wolf in sheep's clothing routine. Tell him to stop pretending to be a fiscal conservative and start voting like one. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
Are you from New Hampshire? Have you ever been to New Hampshire? Has anyone you've known ever sent you a postcard from New Hampshire? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then you too can become one of New Hampshire's very own Little Wandering Voters, thanks to the Senator Martha Fuller Clark's Home for the Little Wandering Voters Foundation. With your out-of-state voter participation and your liberal contributions, we can help Senator Martha and all her liberal pals stay in office.
He tried to make us believe he was a fiscal conservative, but State Senator Jeb Bradley has been deceiving New Hampshire taxpayers. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, he claimed to be one of us, pretending to blend in, but all along, voting like a liberal Democrat. And oh, how he drooled at the opportunity to vote to expand Obamacare, which will result in higher taxes and longer wait times in the emergency room. And now, Senator Bradley is leading the charge to try and pass a Senate bill to prevent us from criticizing his vote. Call Senator Bradley at 603-569-4208 and tell him that we're on to his wolf in sheep's clothing routine. Tell him to stop pretending to be a fiscal conservative and start voting like one. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
She tried to make us believe she was a fiscal conservative, but State Senator Nancy Stiles has been deceiving New Hampshire taxpayers. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, she claimed to be one of us, pretending to blend in, but all along voting like a liberal Democrat. She voted to raise your gas tax by another 23%, taking a bigger bite out of our wallets every time we're at the pump. And oh, how she drooled at the opportunity to vote to expand Obamacare, which will result in higher taxes and longer wait times in the emergency room. And now the Senate wants to pass a bill to prevent us from criticizing Senator Stiles' vote. Call Senator Stiles at 603-918-0553 and tell her that we're on to her wolf in sheep's clothing routine. Tell her to stop pretending to be a fiscal conservative and start voting like one. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by GraniteGrok.com, New Hampshire's conservative website. We are your feared, extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone-stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for 2 hours of news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com. Grok Talk.
All right, so why did I do that twice?
Thanks for turning on my mic.
You turned it off.
Well, anyways,
welcome to Grok Talk. I wasn't recording the live stream. I wasn't recording for the podcast. That's why I started over. Now we're 48 seconds behind, but that's okay. Some of you got to listen to our theme twice. Hey, welcome to Grok Talk, broadcasting live from the CNHT studios in Concord, New Hampshire. Ed Nail was on a few minutes before. If you were watching the live stream, you'd be able to watch that on video later. We have a good show for you today. Richard Olson from the Londonderry Fishing Game Club will be coming in to talk to us about the demise of the background check bill in the New Hampshire House.
And fellow Grokster, don't forget that. By the way, I do need to push out, we do hope that fellow Grokster Susan, who also helped in that effort to defeat HB 1589, she's feeling a little under the weather. We send her a shout-out. Hope that she feels better much sooner. That's all.
I'm just wondering why my laptop went blank.
Anyways, but so we've got Rick coming in. I mean, it was a massive effort here in New Hampshire that basically we've got people, he's looking very befuddled, folks.
I am anyway, keep going.
So he, big massive turnouts, both pro and con, against enhanced background checks. And the way that the bill was written, certainly originally, it's like, I couldn't even lend you my gun if we were at somebody's wide, expansive field to go shooting just for the heck of it, because our laws allow us to do that. We would both be set up with felony B, arrests and convictions automatically. I couldn't sell you my gun unless we went to a friendly FFL, a gun dealer, run the checks. It's like every turn, nook and cranny that's possible, the progressives are trying to make us guilty first off instead of innocent. Now, they do that over in Europe. Everything is impossible to do or in violation to do unless expressly allowed by laws. Here in the United States, we turn that upside down because supposedly we are free citizens, so that we can do whatever we want unless expressly told not to. And we see this continuing breaking down of our civil space by progressives saying, well, you can't do that. No, you shouldn't do that. It's a bizarre and terrifying confluence of we must eliminate risk from all parts of our lives so nobody can ever get killed or hurt. And the precautionary principle, which is a waste of time, which means we shouldn't do anything unless we spend 100 years testing it to make sure that it's absolutely safe.
Why does he keep doing that?
He is not having a good day, folks. So I'll just keep on vamping.
He's going to keep talking. Anyway, real quick, Dr. Betsy McCaughey will be with us a little later. Dr. Julianne Cooper is coming in as well. And then, of course, Richard Olson is going to be with us to talk about guns and stuff, which is what we were talking about. And Mike's here.
Yes.
Oh, now, see, I turned your mic on, and then you started doing mic things with it.
Mike's playing with his mic.
He is.
So, but anyways, you've got an awesome commercial.
I do. I have to get my thing to boot back up, and we'll play it. And Rick's here, too, so we can start in with that.
Hey, Mr. Rick.
So, yeah, we posted it yesterday. We're starting Windows. See, I have this weird thing going on with my power that's driving me crazy. Anyway, it's been a good week.
You okay?
Legislatively.
You're making very strange faces.
I saw some funny-looking people down on the street.
Oh, well, you're in Concord. Of course you saw some funny-looking people down on the street.
It's almost like the dirty hippies.
Well, put on a headset, have a seat, and join us up. Uh-oh. What's he going to show us? Laptop.
Well, probably working better than mine.
We were thinking that he was going to outdo his .50 caliber and go with a .60 or something.
So we do have something else.
This is Mr. Olson, president of Gun Club, and cannons are us.
and he puts on a hell of a fireworks show too.
Oh yeah.
So All right, let's see if this is actually going to work. Craziness that we have here. Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
This is the nice unorganized opening of our show this week.
Ah.
I had some technical difficulties. I started the show, forgot to record part of it. It's great. So we're just gonna run with it. It's been we were talking about HB 1589 a little earlier, and so that was kind of part of the reason why we brought you in, because you and Susan, lots of other people, spent a lot of time going to hearings that didn't appear to make any difference, organizing campaigns to talk to legislators about the bill and what it would actually do versus what people said it would do. And we and I'll just finish with this real quick and then let you go. I know we were talking about the left being all uppity because their bill failed. And some of the chatter from the left, if we can call it that, where they were talking about how the gun people were harassing the legislators. Now, I was reading, that was Susan DeBruce, I think. I was reading that, and I'm thinking to myself, now, when you guys harass legislators, it's not harassment. You're actually educating them about your issue.
I think the word is advocating.
Advocating. There you go.
Well, let's be blunt with liberals, folks. It's buying legislation.
Well, anyway, so when we do it, when we say, well, this is what's really going to happen, we're harassing legislators. So we harassed legislators, and it worked. Let's just...
Let's call it what it is and
celebrate
it.
What it is. That's right.
And that's the thing, and I want to get your opinion of this. A lot of liberals think we're only advocating about guns. We see the underlying issue as this is the freedom and how is government interacting with the citizenry. And we talked about that just a few minutes ago of why is it that they wish to pronounce us guilty before our innocence?
Yeah, those presumptions were...
Those are European presumptions.
Yeah, I mean, they're actually physically in the bill. I mean, I saw an email, totally amazed me. Of course, I can't get to it. I don't have access, but...
wait, we can get you access. There's a cord right here someplace.
No, I meant for to open it, but...
Oh.
Yeah, I don't have any internet access.
Well, that's what I meant. There's internet cables winding around here. We have wireless.
We can hook you up.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, while we wait to do that.
I saw this this email on Facebook that who had posted it? Either I think it was Susan.
This the Zandra Rice Hawkins email?
Oh, no.
No, it's a different one. Okay.
No, I got sent that and I posted it.
Yes, that was awesome. I even thanked her for helping us defeat the bill.
Yep.
Never have I seen so long-winded and trite.
2,200 words. 2,200 words. It's just amazing. But anyways, going to 1589, I sent my email off. Obviously, somebody sent Zandra Rice Hawkins a copy of my email because at that point...
We have cables, people.
She elected to... I mean, she actually quoted me. Or she took stuff out of my email, so somebody sent it, and the way she said it was bizarre.
Welcome to Zandra Rice Hawkins. I believe that's the appropriate definition of her.
But I'm sorry, I was distracted. Where was I going with that? Well, basically, she sent out this 2,100-page note. And my first question is, okay, it's 2,100 words. Are any of the reps going to read it all the way through? I'm sure one or two will, but I get a 2,200 word.
That's the password to log in.
Okay, great. And I get a 2,200 word email. I'm glossing it. After about the third paragraph, I've had enough. I'm sorry. Call me ADD.
Oh,
if you can't say it in 500
don't
words
feel
or less.
bad. I saw Zandra Rice Hawkins, and that was all I needed to see. I was done.
Yeah.
I already knew what she was going to say. I mean, so did you. There was really no point in reading it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I looked through it. It took me an hour and a half to go through the thing, and it's not that I'm a slow reader. Others might argue that I'm something else, but
well, you had to fisk it, and you wanted to see what she said in the context in which she said it, so that you could respond appropriately.
So the bottom line is she bloviated. So the way I responded to it was I sent a follow-up email to all the House reps, and it basically said, fact. This, and I laid out like 9 or 10 facts about New Hampshire gun laws. I says, if anybody tells you anything different here, they're lying to you. They're not telling you the truth. That's just one effort. And
you were harassing them, Rick.
Yes, I was,
with laws and facts.
I and thousands of other Granite Staters who care about the Second Amendment, And I really saw what that meant because John Burt, Representative John Burt, he put this post up on Facebook apologizing. He says, I got 657 emails in one day. I cannot possibly answer all these. I try hard, but I can't.
What's wrong with him? I get that every single day.
Pretty close.
Yeah, I got four email accounts beaten on me. What can I say?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean...
You're surrounded.
And then, one thing I got to mention is J.R. Hole.
Oh. Tireless.
J.R. Hole was one who, he's the one that came up with the floor amendment that ticked him off so much that they said, it's my bill and I'm going home.
That whole thing. It's so
great. It was
great.
his floor amendment that tipped him over.
The fact that he got it passed, for those of you who, we'll just tell you what happened. Here's this bill. This bill is HB 1589. That's going to make it illegal for me to hand skip my gun so he can look at it on the range. That would then be, a felony?
Well, here's the thing.
If you're outside of a range.
Outside of a range. Okay. So, and then so he creates this amendment that said, look, let's create a study committee and look at why New Hampshire has such low violent crime rates. Basically, given the fact that we have this open approach to gun ownership. How are they related? Let's take a look at that and see how that works. Democrats didn't want to see how it worked.
No, they didn't.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just amazed because JR, he came up with this floor amendment that narrowly passed.
Like 2 or 3 votes, yeah.
Yeah, and that tipped him over.
They were done after that. Then it became a game. Then it became an awesome game. Chandler jumped in. He's like, let's do this. Let's do that. Hey, how about we ITL it? 280-something votes to kill it. Like, it's dead.
And, our official motto here at Granite Grok is spank them when they're wrong and thank them when they're right. And I spank Gene Chandler a lot because I think...
Shh, don't tell anybody.
Well,
oh, wait, you just told a whole bunch of people. Sorry.
Yeah, well... all you got to do is Google Granite Grok and Gene Chandler.
That's okay. Earlier, I was turning on it.
It was the visual skip.
Yes. But we do have to thank certain people, even if we're mad as all get out for a lot of other stuff. When they do right, we have to say, you did right. And here's one case where he did really,
Not only
really
that,
good.
he didn't vote on it so he could bring it up for reconsideration.
That's correct.
Killed it again. They didn't want to reconsider it, which means it's dead for the rest of the year.
Yep, basically.
So we're done with that bill.
So now all we have to do is defeat the majority in the election so they can't bring it up next year.
Yeah. One of the things I like to do is, like when I sent that email to, the H rep where everybody gets it, is I always ended my emails with see you on the campaign trail or see you at the ballot box.
Yeah, and then the nice thing is that should be a scary thing because politicians on both sides of the aisle understand gun owners vote, and they vote religiously.
Yep.
Because they, hate to throw an Obama-ism in here, but the clingers to their guns and their Bibles conflated with the former NRA president Charlton Heston out of my cold dead hands kind of deal.
Yeah.
They just don't seem to understand that we do view guns in a lot of ways similar to that of the American flag. It's not the flag that we are so enamored about. It's not the guns that we are enamored about. It's the ideals that stand for each of those particular things.
Well, I guess one of the things that really bothered me was about this bill and all the talking points the Democrats were using was they kept using the sham statistics over and over. And it didn't matter how many times, they were duplicative about it. They got up to the microphone when they testified, and they just simply continued on with 40% of guns purchased were done outside of a background check, sham statistic. And then this one where some number like 87% of Granite Staters support background checks. Well, that you guys remember I wrote about that particular.
Well, remember, it used to be 93%.
Yeah, 93, 87, something like that.
And that professor from New England College still hasn't released his methodology or the data underlying it.
No, I specifically asked him, and he has not done it. Ben Tafoya. Dr. Ben Tafoya is his name, and he is he's a progressive professor at New England College. He doesn't even live here in the Granite State.
How do you spell his last name?
Tafoya.
I think we're going to have to start giving him some. What are you playing? Or is that me? Or is that somebody's phone? Oh, that was interesting. We should start giving him some Google love, I think. I think it's about time that we treat him like, say, a vote stealer. We should just start writing about him so that when you go search his name, you get all kinds of interesting things about why he will not read his research over and over and over again until there is nothing else left.
Why don't we challenge him to a debate with Professor John Lott?
Well, that would be interesting, but what I'm finding...
even with Rick, because Rick could slice him and dice him.
What I'm finding is that when I do go and ask some of these people...
Would you like a cough drop?
Got to drink more Mountain Dew.
I have a cough drop.
I may take you up on it.
Okay.
But there are a number of people who don't see things the way that we do. And I've been asking, would you like to come on the show? Would you like to come on the show and debate it? Why not have that open and public debate? They keep refusing. They don't want to come on. Either they just don't understand that they lose when they don't do things like this, or they understand they will lose anyways. But I really wish that somebody would come on and talk to us or debate it so we can bring up this
Exactly,
stuff.
Yeah. But, I mean, I sent 2 or 3 emails to Dr. Tafoya. I wouldn't respond to any one of them. So I was actually, I was kind of...
We're going to grok him.
I was actually thinking, I'm going to drive over to Henniker, see if I can corner him, get my little camera going. And I thought, those people are overly sensitive over there. I'd probably end up in the Hooskow or something, But, I mean, I corresponded. I mean, well, it was one-sided. I sent him emails, and he hit the delete button, obviously. But, that's...
All right. And that's because they have nothing to back up their arguments, and certainly nothing truthful to back up their arguments. And that, indeed, is the problem. If you come to a genuine disagreement, a genuine debating point, people are only too anxious. Only last week, Skip started speaking to the Free State folks about anarchy versus small government, and rather than arrange a debate, they started on the spot. They were so keen to get going.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The people who understand the subject matter, the people who aren't afraid to make their stances, the people who aren't afraid of perhaps losing in a debate, they're all in favor. Like, yeah, let's talk about it. And, I learned some things when I talked with Carla, and we've learned some things from talking with Ian and some of the other Free Staters. They have corrected us. We've corrected them on certain stances. And I think it's a great time because I just believe that it's the right thing to do. But I notice every single time very, very few progressives are willing to take on the people who are at Granite Grok on in a debate. Susan the Bruce is one of them. Nice little shout out to Susan the Bruce. That's twice today we've done that.
Susan Bruce.
That she says, I wouldn't dare dignify your program with my presence. Really?
Well,
a blogger who gets maybe 50 hits a day.
That's okay. We wouldn't be able to get the smell out after anyway. So we wanted
you're such a meanie.
I am. We wanted to do this thing. Rick's segment actually starts in 10 minutes, but we're going to do it real quick. We're going to take a little break. There's going to be a little hissing noise. My problem is that my battery has gone, so I now cannot turn off my laptop and run on my battery. So there's a little background whine that we pick up that I edit out in the post-production of the podcast version. So you're still going to hear this little hissing noise in the background because I can't get rid of it. Yeah. It's just something to do with the connector on the back of my laptop. But anyway, there was this Cadillac commercial that was out that we posted that's just awesome. I mean, it is GM product. There is a little hypocrisy in the tone, in the reality to the tone of the commercial. But the commercial is so awesome that we wanted you to have to hear it. It's just that good.
Why do we work so hard? For what? For this? For stuff? Other countries, they work, they stroll home, they stop by the cafe, they take August off. Off. Why aren't you like that? Why aren't we like that? Because we're crazy, driven, hard-working believers, that's why. Those other countries think we're nuts. Whatever. Were the Wright brothers insane? Bill Gates, Les Paul, Ali. Were we nuts when we pointed to the moon? That's right. We went up there, and you know what we got? Bored. So we left. Got a car up there, left the keys in it. Do you know why? Because we're the only ones going back up there, that's why. But I digress. It's pretty simple. You work hard, you create your own luck, and you gotta believe anything is possible. As for all the stuff, that's the upside of only taking 2 weeks off in August. N'est-ce pas?
So that's the Cadillac commercial. It's just an awesome commercial.
And it really is. And it comes up.
Yeah, it takes a swipe at the French socialist surrender monkeys right there.
Well, not only that, but if you've been following the latest hijinks of Obamacare, where the OMB came out and said that the 2.3 million jobs equivalents were going to be lost because of Obamacare, and not the jobs themselves, but because of the high marginal tax rates involved in Obamacare. If you were in $1 more than what the subsidy limits allow you to earn, you can be paying anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 extra a year for Obamacare coverage. So in and of itself, it's a huge disincentive to do exactly what that commercial says, which is to work hard, strive for more, be the best you can, and by the way, you happen to acquire stuff along the way that you can be proud of. And we've seen society being turned by the leftists as to being anti-consumerism. I'm sorry, but if you work hard, you should reap the fruits of your labor, and we see the leftists trying to poo-poo that whole idea that has driven this country for years and years and years. So I look at that ad, and especially, as you said, Steve, coming out of GM, it's not a repudiation of the French folks who say n'est-ce pas, but it's also a repudiation, I think, of the Obama government, who is also progressiveness or progressivism is nothing more than not making you free from government, but free from necessity and free from responsibility. If you look back to Woodrow Wilson, you will look back to FDR's Second Bill of Rights. It's freedom from necessity. The government should make sure that you have everything that you need, and you don't have to do a thing for it. And a lot of us are going, yeah, that's nice, that people can now have the freedom not to work. And that's been the biggest meme this week.
Fun employment.
You don't have to work anymore. And I'm going, what about the rest of us who have to work now to support these freeloaders?
Well, I just heard, I was listening a few weeks back on some Rush podcast, an interesting statistic that Mitt was right, that 40% of the populace pays 109% or something like that of the income tax. Wait a minute. And the lowest 40% has negative income taxes. In other words, it's not that the government takes in 100% of the so-called taxed amount. It's that the people that work pay more than their share, so the people that don't work much can actually get money back to the tune of $25,000 per year equivalent in the case of the benefits somewhere down near the bottom. And, whenever you create a set of incentives and a set of barriers to working, as we are now creating. Europe did this years ago. The UK did it. You end up with layabouts. You end up with people in government-subsidized housing.
Layabouts. Gimme girls and layabouts.
Yeah. The layabouts usually guys, and they're not very nice. You end up with government-subsidized housing, government-subsidized income, food, everything else, and you lose so much when you earn that first dollar or first pound that you just don't bother to go and earn it. And we've done this with Obamacare. We finally achieved the utopia, the dysfunctional utopia, or dystopia, as some would say, that the progressives have striven for. You've reached a point where you've created an entire growing class of people for whom it is not worth their while to work except for one thing. And we must educate them. That one thing, folks, is freedom. That you have to earn. Otherwise, they are too chicken to be anything but sheep, and they will be plucked and shorn as a result.
We have two guests coming on later. Dr. Cooper is going to come in, and we're going to talk about educating the electorate, something on our topic. And then, of course, Dr. McCaughey will be in to talk more about Obamacare. So that's a nice segue. And we're going to talk about some more gun stuff in a little bit. I know there's things going on. The California ruling was pretty impressive.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The New Jersey, they're trying to do something very similar. There's 19 attorney generals who have signed on to help New Jersey. And our own AG, Uncle Joe Foster, has not signed on to that, so that's intriguing. We'll talk about that.
Yep.
And,
I suspect he will not either.
I don't think that he will. It's not in his nature.
No. No, there was... I saw...
was that a swipe at Obama there, Steve, when you said attorney generals instead of attorneys general?
I should have said attorneys general.
Going back to the... I was just listening to Megyn Kelly last night on Fox News, and she was talking about Obama. This whole. I don't think there's enough people talking about this whole constitutional crisis that we're in.
Oh, absolutely.
Obama pushed back the date that businesses have to comply with the mandate.
But he didn't just push back the
right,
date.
exactly.
He loaded it up with threats and more shenanigans. Let's get back to that.
We will get back to that.
Sultans of Swing came on, so I'm shutting up now.
Yeah, we're going to listen to the Sultans of Swing.
This was popular when I got married, and that's a long time
I was in
ago.
high school.
I was too. I remember about the time I got
you guys beat.
We're aging Mike here on Grok Talk.
I have that 8-track.
You have that.
I'm cheesy, and I age like a fine wine.
All right. This is Grok Talk. I'm here with Skip, Mike, and Rick, and we'll be right back. Striving to bring you different music every week, no matter how tedious I claim it is. It's actually not that difficult. Last week I was listening to the show and we were talking about the music, and Skip's like, or Mike or somebody's like, you guys, great music. You always do this. I'm like, it's a little tedious. It can be, because you want to find something that you can put on that's got enough instrumental at the front end that you don't run into lyrics too soon.
Correct.
Right? And, I'm busy. And usually what happens is I'll just sit down in an hour and I'll find 5 or 6 or 8 things that I want to use. And then I'll just pull them in and take a look. And then I'll just throw them into the audio editor and listen and see what it sounds like. And then sometimes I'll just go, that'll do. Welcome back to Grok Talk, coming to you from the CNHT studios in beautiful Concord, New Hampshire. We had some snow the other day. We're going to get some more today. Dr. Cooper did text me. She is en route, so she won't be calling in. She'll be in studio around 10. We are here with Rick Olson. Mike is here fresh from Baltimore. And
Nashville.
And Nashville.
Where they play live blues in the food court at the airport.
Well, that doesn't stink.
Live blues at the food court in the airport.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's cool. And, of course, Skip Murphy, co-founder of GraniteGrok.com. Please check us out at GraniteGrok.com. A lot of the things that we talk about, we reference from blogs we've written or information we've posted, written by others. And we want you to visit them as well as us. And by all means, if you think that maybe this is a great value that you're getting, you can donate to us at GraniteGrok.com and help pay for all these wires and cables and equipment and software and my new battery for my laptop that I'm going to have to replace because it's dead. And we're going to move forward with Rick. We've had... we already touched on HB 1589 and the excellent orchestration of its destruction, which was, of course, fabulous. There's another bill in the Senate, SB 244, that would basically turn people into criminals as well. And why don't we talk about that real quick, and then we'll move into some of the other stuff that's going around.
Well, honestly, I don't think anybody knows what that bill will do. It's rather confusing. Originally, it was proposed by Representative Goley and Senator David Waters. And there were 2 components to the bill. I think the overarching goal was to get people adjudicated mentally ill into the NICS check system so that if you were crazy or whatever the term is, screw loose, okay? And
you're going to hear from the NAMBY.
No, we like
people.
that. We like that.
I'm lonely, so I need to hear from somebody. So, anyways, if you need your bolts tightened up and a judge says so, okay, they can put you into the NICS system so you can't buy firearms. That was the overarching intent of the bill. The way the bill was written, that was not the case, because what they had was the first. It was like a 4-page bill. 4 or 6-page bill. I can't remember now.
Which is way too long. Way too long for a New Hampshire bill, as it is.
The first couple paragraphs talked about who gets put into the NICS system, and then the next several pages talked about how you get out of the NICS system. And so basically, you look at it, you read it, and if you have an understanding of how courts work and motions and civil procedure in New Hampshire, because
which you do,
yeah. You're talking thousands of dollars, lots of hours, opportunities for, cops to file motions and do this and that.
It's a
and the
legal system fiscal enhancement bill.
Yeah, basically. And it's the end result is this disastrous process that could take you up to a year to 2 years to get your name out of the NICS system. Okay? What does it take to get your name in the NICS system? What if, say, your ex-wife was mad at you, if you have an ex-wife, okay?
I do.
And she called up and said, I don't like the way he's talking. I think he's going to hurt himself. He's crazy. And the next thing you know, the police show up with the guys in the white suits. They put the jacket on you with the wraparound sleeves, shove you in the sheriff's van, and take you off to Concord. You're on South Fruit Street. Isn't that bizarre? New Hampshire State Hospital, where you go in if you've been adjudicated IEA, okay, his name's South Fruit Street.
And can you buy cake on South Fruit Street?
No, I don't know if you can. No, I don't think you buy anything. But anyway, so when you're at the state hospital for 3 days, okay, within that 3 days, you have to have a hearing with a judge. Now, if that judge says, "Oh no, I think there's been a mistake. You're not crazy. You can go home now," okay. Now, that adjudication in theory goes away. But if you're in the NICS system, you now have to, under this bill, you would have to go through that whole process of what they laid out. So the bill got amended. And Susan was nice enough to send me what the amendment was. And then I took and pasted it onto a Word document. I went, I can't read that. So at some point here, I need to get the amendment that Sharon Carson put together, Senator Sharon Carson, and look at it, because it's still pretty long. It's like 3 or 4 pages long, And I think the long and the short of Senate Bill 244 is we just got to kill it, because if they want to just simply have a provision to get people's names out of the NIC, I can live with that. Okay, there really should be, because there really is no guiding statutory authority to do that right now. I mean, certainly it can be done, but there's nothing that guides it, But this whole notion of where, okay, I was adjudicated, let's say I was adjudicated 9 years ago, I was up at the state hospital and, I got kicked loose and my life's going great, So now I want to buy a gun, so I want to get my name out of the NICS preclusion system. So now I file my petition. And one of the conditions of these bills is they want to know if you've been seeking any mental health treatment since that time. Well, what does that mean? That means if you electively have chosen to go to marriage counseling, that's now in. If you chose to go for counseling or see a hypnotist because you've quit smoking, that all falls under the purview of mental health.
Kevin Kervick, who is a professor at Southern New Hampshire University who does this, he's a therapist.
Yep.
When this first came out, I emailed him and I said, what do you think about this bill? And he says he thinks it's crap.
Yeah.
He says because this puts therapists in a position where they have to decide basically whether or not somebody will be entitled to their Second Amendment rights, because they're under law, they're supposed to report. They already have to report because of Obamacare for all kinds of things.
Right.
But this would require them to contact the state and let them know that they saw this person. There's privacy issues. There's, the patient-doctor thing. It's just, he says, this is a nightmare.
Right.
Well, not only, and that's not the only industry, because I know that with daycare, if a child comes in with lots of bruises, daycares have to report that to DCYF here in New Hampshire or the equivalent in a lot of other states. And slowly we're seeing, I believe, if you go in to see your regular doctor, you have to answer the Obamacare answers, which I will absolutely refuse to answer, even though I'm told I have to. And it's like more and more private individuals are being sucked in to be government agents. And we're seeing that continual blurring of what is a private citizen, what is civil society, and what is government. In a lot of cases, there's lots of government and very little private citizen, and there's almost no civil society left anymore.
You also have to be careful because as a person who might be, say, conservative, you have factors on the right or on the left who view that as a mental illness. So it's already come out in print. It's come out from agencies. We've had reports that say people who used to be in the military or people who have Gadsden flags at their house might be a threat to national security.
You mean that giant one on the front of my garage?
Yeah, the one I saw last night when you weren't there.
Yeah, or the Navy Jack flying over my backyard.
There was a nice party at a Valentine's Day gathering at Mike's house, and unfortunately he couldn't be there because he was stuck in transit. But those are the kinds of things where you're asking this institution. It's a left-leaning institution with lots of ties to the government. We've had Kevin, and he's talked about it. It's like global warming research. The government provides you money to produce results they like. So now you've got this entire industry, cottage industry of rent seekers, who are advantaged by the notion that they could say, "Oh, you have a mental illness, no guns for you."
Yep. Well, we've seen that with...
And they'll no doubt at some point start to get incentives for reporting that. At the very least, there'll be disincentives for not asking all of those questions and actually getting answers. So I could see it getting to the point where the doctor's put in a position where he's penalized if you don't answer his questions. And that's how they're going to coerce it. And at some point, you're going to have to tell the doctor, well, get off the government dole and I'll see you privately.
Well, actually, Gene Shaheen, our senior senator, said, if you want that capability, pay more. Yeah. So that you don't get reported in. I mean, that's literally what she said.
Well, she's worth $14 million. She can do that.
Right. Yeah. Just like Ezekiel Emanuel, Dr. Death Panel, said when finally put under pressure, well, we didn't actually say you could keep your doctor. We said that that you could pay more if you wanted to keep your doctor.
Yeah, that's
so even under communism,
you could pay more to have them tell you that you don't have any rights.
That's an interesting reference you made.
Even under
Dr.
communism,
Death Panel, because he does have that Joseph Mengele look.
No, but he is
the prime architect.
He is Buzz quality adjusted life year.
Buzz quality adjusted.
No, but I mean the long and the short of this bill is that
if you fall off the ends of his bell curve, it will toll for you.
His hockey stick is.
So
he shoots, he scores. Okay, so
the long and the short of it is I don't know what the amendment says. When it was all bunched together in a bunch of text, I just couldn't read it. I don't know. They do a terrible job disseminating these amendments when they make them.
That's true.
And I'm starting to believe they do that on purpose. They don't want us to see the amendments. They want us to take their word for it that it's a good amendment.
It's interesting because in a lot of states you don't get as much access to the legislation as quickly as you. If somebody gives me a bill number, I can pull that sucker up, see the entire docket, see where the hearings are, go look at the notes, see who was on the committee. I can read the bill. There's a lot of things you can do. But amendments, you're absolutely right. You actually have to, I think you have to go through the record and find it in the text. And some of these House records and Senate records are like hundreds of pages of stuff, on a wide range of bills. And then sometimes there's a reference. And sometimes it leads to an amendment that you can actually read.
Right.
But not always, and you have to wonder.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously they want to hide stuff.
Sure.
They always want to do that. But
let me play devil's advocate here for a second. I think that a lot of conservatives and most people in society, and liberals certainly go this way, liberals want to make sure that anybody who is absolutely possible at doing something wrong with a gun be disallowed from owning a firearm.
Sure.
I think most of society says, it's probably not a bad idea to do that. And the question is where is that balance point? And I will tell you that I'm involved in a nice email thread where people are wondering about that because people are saying, well, what if I'm a felon that I have done my time, it's a couple decades down the line. I've kept my nose clean. Why shouldn't I have all of my rights? And here we go down back to the base point again of rights and freedoms. What are enumerated rights? What are natural rights? And does government have the responsibility or even the ability to take away some of those rights while allowing you, the word allow, for you to retain your other rights? Now, allow means, well, government's now in charge of those rights.
Right.
So the problem is when you look at Amendment or Article 2A here in New Hampshire, you look at the Second Amendment of the Bill of Rights at the U.S. level, it never says only those people we like can have this right. And what do we do about that? And it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks last night. What do we do in cases like that? Are we supposed to have a balance point, or do we say, no, everybody continues to have this right to self-defense with a firearm? And I think we're about to go to a break.
We are, and then Rick can respond. We'll be right back.
From the CNHT studios in Concord, New Hampshire, just a few blocks from the New Hampshire State House, this is
Rock Talk.
This Throwback Thursday episode of Grok Talk was originally recorded on February 15th, 2014. Our guests were LFGC President Richard Olson, Dr. Julianne Cooper, and Dr. Betsy McCaughey. The ads and promos you hear were running regularly in early to mid-2014. Segment breaks have been moved or edited to fit our 2016 programming format.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Okay, we're back. Well, okay, so to your point, if you remember what his point was.
No.
I will
recap.
I will recap. Or répétez avec moi, as my French teacher used to say back in junior high school. When you look at the Second Amendment, Bill of Rights, you look at Article 2A here in the New Hampshire Constitution. Sure. It does not say only people we approve of get to keep this right.
Correct.
So in terms of guns and the ownership of firearms, you know, we're talking about felons. We're talking about the people who've been adjudicated to be mentally insufficient to have this. Now, if you go back to the plain language of the constitutions, we're a little bit befuddled here. As I said, liberals are all about trying to get rid of anybody who can own a firearm. They want to get rid of them, period. They'll use any excuse. Most people in society say, felons, probably not a great idea to let them have a firearm because of recidivism rates. Mm-hmm. The other thing is those people who are mentally unstable that could go off in a snap and then snap off a few rounds. We don't want them to have that. But then you look at the plain language that never says, okay, everybody gets this right except for these set of people. What do we do when you're confronted with the plain language? And you know something, the more libertarians on this email thread have some points that I really can't answer if I'm going to stay true to the plain wording of the constitutions versus where is there a balancing point? Should there be a balancing point to say, yes, you can have a firearm, but he cannot?
Well, and I think unless your felony was a violent crime, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to defend yourself when you get back out. And if it was a violent crime, even then, we need to figure out how that squares with the Constitution, because the Constitution doesn't say you can have rights sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, I've always said it's a corrupt argument. I mean, clearly it's a corrupt argument. There are people in our society you don't want to have guns because they will, in fact, hurt you. It's that simple. So why do the libertarians and the free staters always drill it down?
Well, I'm not so sure that I would say the free staters, but certainly those people who are full-blown libertarians who are only looking at the words of the plain words, and I consider them pretty plain words of the Constitution, are foundational documents. Mm-hmm. You know, do they have a point?
Actually, to that point, real quick, because I think this has something to do with what you're going to say. Based on our discussions with Carla and Ian last week, most of those people are people who, when you drill all the way down, don't even want those words because they think that those words have no value because none of the other words do. So, you talk about people, it's basically drilling down to anarchy where you say, well, these words don't really mean what they mean, therefore why do we have any words at all? And so some of those folks who are saying, it doesn't matter whether they were a felon or not, they should be able to have their right to defend themselves, are the same people who are saying none of these words really mean anything to us anyway. We're just kind of going along with it.
A bit like that philosopher in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy who argued black was white and then got run over on the next zebra crossing.
That's right, yeah. So, you're right. There are definitely people who are just too, their bolts can't be tightened enough,
No.
as you said earlier. And you don't want, because that leads to anarchy, which is mob rule. You're going to have people, if you can't stop them.
Here's a great analogy, okay? These anarchists that want no limits whatsoever, if I take a battering ram and an M16 and I smash down their door, what are they going to do? They're going to stop me. They're imposing a limit on me. Are they not?
But they believe that limits should be voluntary and cooperative, and it's all sunshine and lollipops. They're only a stone's throw away from liberals in some sense because
very much.
Because
we had this discussion last night at your house.
Yeah, because they believe that if it's all cooperation and capitalism, that what could go wrong? Well, my answer to that is Genghis Khan is what could go wrong.
Well, just human nature.
Wait a minute, are you giving me the long answer, dude?
It's real simple. It's human nature.
Yeah.
The utopian experiment fails for the same reason that the cooperation, it just doesn't work. People won't go for it.
The nice guys get rolled over by the not-so-nice guys.
There will always be people who are like, I could have more.
Well, when you have laws that are, I go back to what Justice Brandeis once said, law is the witness and external deposit of our moral society. So then if we have a society where we sanction, that's the way we're going to do it, felons and crazies are going to have guns, and the only limits you impose are those you impose, that's a pretty tough world to live in.
Yeah. Now, I have a problem with allowing a felon who has been convicted of a violent crime to allow them to have a firearm when they come out.
They shouldn't.
But I do know of people who have been convicted of a felony. A couple decades down the road, they've turned out to be fine, upstanding people. And they look at me and say, why do you have the right to defend you and yours and your property? And you've been good the last couple of decades. I've been good the last couple of decades. I've turned my life around. Why am I not afforded the same right to defend me, mine, and my property the way that you do?
When does this fit in with the SB 244 discussion about the next thing and getting people off it? That's really where we are, right?
No, because then we're talking about crazy people there.
Yeah, that's true. But anybody can be put on that list. Technically, anybody can be put on the other one as well.
Here's the thing. With SB 244, a judge can put you in the state hospital and you don't even appear before that judge. All it takes is a cop and a social worker and a doctor to say, oh, cart him off, and then you're gone. You're going to be there for at least 2 days or 3 days.
All of those people are on the government payroll, probably. So that's not a good sign.
But here's the other thing that I just don't seem to understand. The bill does list how you get off of the NICS system.
How much money you got?
Where does the state of New Hampshire get off in trying to tell the federal government what they're going to do with their own federal list?
Because there's no guarantee that if the state of New Hampshire says he's okay now, that the federal government gives a damn.
Yeah.
Once you got on that federal list, you probably ain't getting off.
And the problem is if you don't have a New Hampshire AG or a local sheriff who's willing to stand up to the federal government, you're screwed.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing about the bill. If you go with the assumption that, some people need to be put on the NICS system because they are a danger to society, let's give that as a given. But how does New Hampshire have the wherewithal to pass a law that tells the federal government, and now this is what you're going to do with your list? I just don't understand that unless it's just for pure political theater.
I don't think you can find any way to make this work. The reason the language of the Constitution is plain and simple is because that's how it needs to be. If you try and write complicated laws that say people can get their rights back if this, if that, when the other, Basically what you're saying is they can't get their rights back. So you give them their rights back, and if they do something stupid, you lock them away for longer, or maybe you execute them.
Now I hop onto the other side of the playing devil's advocate, and now that person goes out and kills a few more people. Who's at fault?
He is still, because guess what? You told him he couldn't get.
Well, yeah, indirectly you're correct.
And here's why. Here's why. Very very simply, if he's a felon, if he's a real bad guy, he doesn't care that felons aren't allowed to have guns. He'll find a way to get one, and he'll hurt people.
Which is pretty much what happens now.
So do something real simple. Have a waiting period, a probation period. You come out of prison, you get a couple of years, and you get your rights back. And you know what? Because if you're a real bad guy, within that couple of years, you'll be back inside because you got that gun illegally or you used something else.
No, that would work. I think there is.
I'm done.
There really is an argument for people who were charged, like Ward Bird was charged with a felony for brandishing.
Sure.
Now, that's a law that made no sense.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, we couldn't do anything about it. The judge read the law. The jury looked at the law. Nobody could annul the law or anything. They were stuck.
The jury could have.
They could have, but they didn't.
John Lynch could have let him out of jail.
John Lynch could have let him out of jail, but he didn't because he was a Democrat. And
he doesn't like guns.
He doesn't like guns. So, I mean, there were a lot of things that could have gone right. But in that particular example, there's a guy who was charged with a felony, improperly, really, but that's the way the law was.
He showed the gun in his holster. That's brandishing?
Yeah, right. So anyway, he still hasn't been pardoned.
No, he hasn't been pardoned.
He was let out of jail.
Right.
The sentence was commuted, but the crime was not expunged from his record.
Exactly.
Right. So he's still
a
felon.
felon.
He
cannot
technically own a firearm.
Right.
For no reason other than that there was a nut job on his property, he wouldn't leave, and he put his hand on his pistol.
And that's an accurate description. That woman is a nut job.
Right.
And was found to be so, and was charged with crimes, including cruelty to animals and others, in multiple states.
We're waving at Roger.
Roger Wilkins.
He doesn't want to be on camera.
Come on in.
Come on in.
Wave to the camera.
We've got cameras going. We're live streaming. This is our friend Roger Wilkins.
Yeah, Ed Dale and Roger Wilkins just did a walk-on.
Yep.
Yeah, good. Nice silent sneaking.
No, but going back to the point.
Wait. There's a hall that goes around, so let's just point that out.
Yeah.
They didn't have to come through.
But let's also give. I'm going to follow them. So hold on, folks, because there's something.
There's something really important, and that really important is it's their property.
It is.
Here's the reason why
they allow us to use this most excellent studio, even with its decaying old office equipment around the edges.
There's an organization here that is using some of this office space
yes,
as well, and
it's
paying rent, unlike us.
It's called Concerned Veterans for America, a brand new group that has been formed and that Roger Wilkins is helping with. So, and we're going to have you on, Roger, because you're next door. But, yeah, we're giving you a free plug right now because we're live streaming. And we need you to talk to Steve to get you on the show as soon as possible. All right? And maybe by that time, you'll actually have something in your office.
Is he involved in the Navy SEALs coming through next week?
Yes, he is, by the way. You've got people coming in, right?
Yeah, we have a meeting, yeah.
Okay, but with some other important people coming in. Before you leave, stop in. All right.
Well,
so what we're saying here is it all
squirrels?
Squirrels just came through the nest, and we all lost it. What
we're
saying
about crazy people and guns and felons. That's what
we're not felons, but we're crazy, and there are probably some guns around.
We are the ADD bunch here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily crazy. So this is the center of a lot of good activity here in Concord. It's a conservative location, and let's once again give a plug for the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers.
Did you just say? Wait a minute. Did you just say Concord was a conservative location?
This location.
No, I said this location.
Okay.
This is a conservative location in Concord.
I said that's a whole show. Right?
Yeah. A lonely outpost. And
it's a foxhole, a bivouac, a refuge,
and we are giving a plug for cnht.org.
All right, and thank you, CNHT. We'll be right back with Dr. Julianne Cooper. My name's Steve. I'm here with Rick Olson, Mike Rogers, and Richard Olson. I said, Skip Murphy. We're all here. We'll be back. Bye.
Feel the power.
Oh, I can feel it.
Our moment of triumph approaches. It's
Grok Talk.
This Throwback Thursday episode of Grok Talk was originally recorded on February 15th, 2014. Our guests were LFGC President Richard Olson, Dr. Julianne Cooper, and Dr. Betsy McCaughey. The ads and promos you hear were running regularly in early to mid-2014. Segment breaks have been moved or edited to fit our 2016 programming format.
He tried to make us believe he was a fiscal conservative. But State Senator Dave Booten has been deceiving New Hampshire taxpayers. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, he claimed to be one of us, pretending to blend in, but all along voting like a liberal Democrat. He voted to raise your gas tax by another 23%, taking a bigger bite out of our wallets every time we're at the pump. And oh, how he drooled at the opportunity to vote to expand Obamacare, which will result in higher taxes and longer wait times in the emergency room. And now the Senate wants to pass a bill to prevent us from criticizing Senator Booten's vote? Call Senator Booten at 603-203-5391 and tell him that we're on to his wolf in sheep's clothing routine. Tell him to stop pretending to be a fiscal conservative and start voting like one. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
Are you from New Hampshire? Have you ever been to New Hampshire? Has anyone you've known ever sent you a postcard from New Hampshire? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then you too can become one of New Hampshire's very own Little Wandering Voters. Thanks to the Senator Martha Fuller Clark's Home for the Little Wandering Voters Foundation. With your out-of-state voter participation and your liberal contributions, we can help Senator Martha and all her liberal pals stay in office.
He tried to make us believe he was a fiscal conservative, but State Senator Jeb Bradley has been deceiving New Hampshire taxpayers. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, he claimed to be one of us, pretending to blend in, but all along voting like a liberal Democrat. And oh, how he drooled at the opportunity to vote to expand Obamacare, which will result in higher taxes and longer wait times in the emergency room. And now, Senator Bradley is leading the charge to try and pass a Senate bill to prevent us from criticizing his vote. Call Senator Bradley at 603-569-4208 and tell him that we're on to his wolf in sheep's clothing routine. Tell him to stop pretending to be a fiscal conservative and start voting like one. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
She tried to make us believe she was a fiscal conservative, but State Senator Nancy Stiles has been deceiving New Hampshire taxpayers. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, she claimed to be one of us, pretending to blend in, but all along voting like a liberal Democrat. She voted to raise your gas tax by another 23%, taking a bigger bite out of our wallets every time we're at the pump. And oh, how she drooled at the opportunity to vote to expand Obamacare, which will result in higher taxes and longer wait times in the emergency room. And now the Senate wants to pass a bill to prevent us from criticizing Senator Stiles' vote. Call Senator Stiles at 603-918-0553 and tell her that we're on to her wolf in sheep's clothing routine. Tell her to stop pretending to be a fiscal conservative and start voting like one. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
Grog Talk.
I have a question. You want me to turn you on? I'm turning everybody on.
Do you want an answer to your question?
Would you walk? No, sorry. Fabulous Thunderbirds. You know, it's good to be here.
And Rick is showing us a picture of an empty star chamber at the New Hampshire legislature.
Yes, absolutely.
And our liberty is most secure when they're not there. Or as I say of Congress, don't do something, just sit there. We don't want you to pass laws. There is no need to pass laws most of the time.
We do. We have this discussion all the time. If we had another 100 legislators, they'd get even less done. It'd be great, you know.
Actually, there was a little something on Instapundit that said, we do not know of all of the federal laws that result in criminalization. Nobody has ever put such a law together. And it'd be very interesting to see how tightly constrained we are in our normal everyday lives and how many laws we actually screw up over in our personal lives just because we don't know them. Know what they are. And
you broke 4 laws getting out of bed this morning.
But there are estimates that most people break multiple laws in the course of every day, laws or government regulations of one sort or another. And I maintain that this is tyranny because when you have arbitrary and capricious laws and law enforcement where nobody knows what the law is and the government can use any of them against you at any time, you are subject to tyranny.
Well, let's ask Dr. Cooper.
I was going to ask that because isn't it one of the main legal foundations is that citizens should know what is legal and what is not,
and should be able to learn it for themselves.
Correct.
And
Dr. Julianne Cooper here from Liberty Harbor Academy.
And thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. We've been trying to get you in for a couple of weeks, but you were unable to make it, and we're glad to have you.
And I'm here now.
You're here now.
Once upon a time, it was said fairly that ignorance of the law is no excuse. I don't believe that's so anymore.
No, because, I mean, when the Roman Empire, this is the historian in me,
this is why you're here. Go for it.
What we need.
When the Roman Empire pulled its act together, it actually published the 12 tables of law so that anyone who was literate could look at the 12 tables of law, and that was the law of the land. And they knew when they were breaking a law and when they weren't. When Napoleon rewrote the laws in France to the Napoleonic Code, his belief was that anyone with a reasonable education should be able to understand the laws and be able to act as their own lawyer.
What does that say about the state, both of our laws and our education today?
Yes. And I believe we have the shortest constitution in the world. It is tiny compared to most. And I have a friend who is from India who he and I have had long discussions about because the Indian constitution is the longest constitution in the world. And it is modeled after the United States Constitution. The difference is that they have tried to enunciate within the Constitution every possible law that they can think of and enumerate everything in it, when the genius of ours is that it's short.
It's short, sharp, and to the point, and mostly tells government what it can't do.
Right.
And doesn't Obama hate that?
Yes.
No, he's not paying any attention anyway. So.
Well, I don't know why he's still there, but.
Because we haven't got enough people with enough courage to impeach him. If we had any honest Democrats, I know that's an oxymoron, he'd be impeached by now.
So anyway, let's go back to the original question.
Right.
Which was, what can we do, or how do we look at our general public knowing what the laws are and what's happening around them? And I think one of the things that it's going to be our job to do this year and the next couple of years is to educate a public and develop ways to educate the public, or to, in a sense, con the public into educating themselves about what's happening. Because I have a neighbor who many of you know how adamant I've been about Common Core and fighting Common Core. And she has a daughter at Central High School, And I walked over and said, "What do you think of the Common Core?" And she said, "The what?"
Yeah.
I mean, I would guess that probably 50-60% of the people who have kids in school don't know anything about Common Core.
Well, we have to have Kim Kardashian start reading it out loud.
Oh, yes.
This week on the Kardashians, we read Common Core.
Yes. Well, it would be a near impossibility.
That's true.
I'd stand a better chance of doing that if we did it on the Osbournes.
Yes. Well, I saw one of the Common Core lessons for ninth graders showed up on my Facebook, but it was a biology lesson on DNA, and it had a chart that gave the DNA sequence and the blood types of a list of people, and the idea was that the student would figure out.
I saw this.
The mother was trying to figure out
who the father was,
who the father of her child was, and it gave options such as the cable man, the mailman.
Yeah. Does that not tell you about our culture?
This is a biology class. And fortunately, some parent managed to get their hands on it and started to raise a stink. But the problem with Common Core is that by mandate, no lessons can be changed. So a teacher who receives this and who wants to keep teaching in the classroom has to use the material and cannot change the material. You can add up to 15% to, you can put your own, this is what their argument is, that you can actually put your own touch on it by adding up to 15% to the material.
You can stick a daisy on it.
Right. But you cannot change the material itself. And they're finding that in the math classes, there are literal mistakes. It's the wrong answer.
The stuff makes no sense.
Right.
My granddaughter was given a very confusing math problem, and the teacher had to change the values in the equations to make the table work.
Right. But that's actually going against what she's being mandated to do.
15% doesn't come close to even being able to explain what some of these problems are.
Right.
And there was another one going around where it was sort of a pre-algebra at the elementary level of a word problem, and you had to put the equation together of you see 4 towels on the beach. Someone comes along and lays a few more out. How many towels are there on the beach?
Right. And my husband was telling me about one that Marcy had candy and wanted to give all of her friends an equal amount of candy. And she had 6 bags and she had 8 bags. How many pieces of candy do the friends get?
Yeah. I mean, this is...
You don't know how many friends there are? You have no idea nothing.
Yeah, this is absolutely ludicrous.
So, well, now here's the thing. We were talking about how do you educate voters? How do you,
right.
I mean, and this is a huge barrier to that because moving forward, if we are unsuccessful with this particular batch, the next batch is going to be too stupid to tie their own shoes, which may already be a problem. It's a huge problem.
So they'll go around with white jackets, wraparound arms, and safety slippers.
Yes.
And they'll all be on the next list. Okay. All right. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you very much. No.
Well,
what do we do, Doctor? How do we get through to these people?
Okay, this may sound ridiculous on its front, but I think we have to start with people who were educated prior to 1970.
Okay.
Which, for the most part, are grandparents.
That would exclude me.
Yes. And, well, you already...
You're already part of the trickle-down education.
But
yes,
I mean, if we start with the people who understand the education...
I'm sorry, I was in first grade.
And push them for teaching their family and in getting their family engaged. And then we have to go to the parents of the school-age kids today. And the school won't do it. So we, as a population, and the people who see what's going on, are going to have to start even more doing something and not talking about it. I mean, we started the school. My husband and I started the school because we sat around bemoaning the fact that the kids that we were getting at the college level knew less and less and less. We taught for 20-plus years, and I was actually having to spend more time explaining things like the timeline, what BC meant to 20-year-olds.
BC, that's a comic strip, yeah?
Right. They didn't even know that because the comic strip hasn't been around.
They aren't familiar with it. So.
No.
They don't know what 1/4 means.
Oh, no, they can't. They cannot read a...
It was on Howie Carr yesterday.
No,
they
they
were
can't
talking
read
about how people don't know. They don't know how to tie their own shoes.
That's wrong, right?
Yeah, they don't know how to. They don't know what 1/4 is. They don't know how to make change. They don't.
Students don't know how to address an envelope.
Well, how about how many English compositions have you had to correct that are written in phone text format?
Well, they don't dare. Because what I do when they send me a email, I simply send it back and say, when you have corrected all of the grammar mistakes and the spelling, I will be glad to read it.
Good for you.
Good for you.
So I even get. Okay, I have.
Thanks for not doing that to me.
The sergeant major will inflict corporal punishment.
Yes, I have a student who graduated under me 15 years ago, who I just recently got an email from, and it was a fairly long email. And at the end, he said, it took me a long time to do this because I had to make sure there were no mistakes.
I mean, we'd be in trouble all the time on Granite Grok, but we do try to do that education. I mean, that's why we do this show.
Right.
That's why we do, as well as the advocacy part of it. But a lot of people don't understand what's going on and why we say the things that we do. It's almost, if you listen to Rush, you're always hearing about the Limbaugh Institute of Advanced Conservative Studies.
Right.
And, it's true. A lot of the people who don't listen to his show don't get the joke. And it's a sad joke that to get to the advanced conservative ideas, you have to understand the floor of how this country was founded
yes.
and built in the first part. And I swear to you, every single day, more and more, I believe that this educational dumbing down of our historical foundations, our founders, and the philosophy behind that has been done on purpose.
Of course it has. It's been done on purpose, and I can document that.
Yeah, there's another aspect to that too.
There's plenty of documentation.
The playing field is so aggressive and so intimidating that a lot of people won't even step onto it. I know people at work who ask me how I can stand it, being in this mess every single day, talking about the politics. If Arnie Duncan and Debbie Wasserman Schultz were drowning and you could only save one of them, what kind of sandwich would you choose to make?
and how would that make
you feel?
Yes. Right, directly out of Common Core, right?
That is Common Core, yeah. Well, it's a word problem.
Yes.
So, I have a woman who's she's like...
The answer is they're both socialists and I celebrate. Next.
So she says, I don't even want to listen to this stuff. And that's really the point. Right? With the education, with the engagement for adults, they basically scare them out of engaging.
Well, and the education system literally says students may not take home material.
And that, to me, is the biggest imposition because government exists to make our lives easier. We contract out some of our responsibilities and what we do to government to be able to do things like plowing our roads and educating our kids. We have contracted to them. But now, oftentimes I see the teachers and the administrations believing that those kids belong to us.
Quick break.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
Okay. So
Okay, we're back. Sorry.
Because we never stopped talking in between the breaks.
We didn't. We kept going, yeah.
So just to do the short version of that, what we have noticed is that with Common Core, the materials are not allowed to leave the school. The kids get sent home with badly photocopied pieces out of the books for their homework. So the parents never get to see the whole travesty of education that the kids are being subjected to.
Right. And we need to make this happen. Now, whether we begin to maybe, and I'm just throwing out some ideas here, but maybe union leader begins to put just an insert into the papers on a regular basis educating on what's happening and maybe a conservative organization produces them.
That's not a bad idea. What if a conservative star were to write history lessons for kids,
Yes.
for example?
Right.
Maybe illustrated with a talking horse.
Yeah. Well, then you have to...
Did you know he's on his second one? It's coming out next month.
Well,
Rush Revere and the Brave Pilgrims, and I think now Rush Revere and the something or other Patriots.
By the way, I returned that copy of your book. It's in your living room.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Well,
I finished listening to the audio copy recently.
The issue with that is that you're talking to the choir.
Yes.
I mean, you're talking to people. Rush is talking to people. Of course, it's a huge number who are listening to Rush, and they're buying his books because it's Rush. But we need to get to the people who don't usually do that.
But those books are written, and the audio tapes are spoken, and they're very good, by the way.
Yes, I have it. I bought it.
To be accessible to the kids.
Yes.
The early teens, and I think it appeals a great deal. And if the grandparents buy these and pass them down, we can make some progress.
Right. But
you're not convinced that's
not
enough.
No, the problem is that if that's all the students know, and they are trying to put that together with what they're hearing in school, we might have made an inch movement.
Right.
And they need to be hearing it in a way that it is a whole lesson, a whole education, because it's just not at this point.
I think really, I'm not sure that we're going to reach the vast majority of the public. I think a lot of it, when you get to the point where Jon Stewart and the Daily, what's the name of the program? Daily Show, is the source or a major source of news for most of the 20s and 30s.
And they think it's news.
And they think it's news. And while there are some nuggets in there, it certainly is not the news. My wife, for whatever reason, likes to watch Good Morning America. It's a 2-hour show, and every once in a while I'll hear it, and I'm going, this is not news, this is fluff. I mean, we've turned away from the hard but absolutely necessary to the easy stuff that means nothing whatsoever.
Right.
And, we have a headphone stealer because somebody's got to say something.
Well, no, I mean, you're talking about Good Morning America. You saw my piece I wrote a couple months back about that.
Yeah.
Okay. One of my, in the interest of disclosure, my daughter is a student at Liberty Harbor Academy. And before she started going there, one of the things I told her is I said, if you do nothing else well in life, you need to learn how to write and communicate. Bottom line. You need to learn how to critical think. You need to have critical thinking skills. So when the time came to try and get her into Liberty Harbor Academy, it was kind of a no-brainer,
Well, the thing that we do at Liberty Harbor is it's not just about writing and communicating. You have to have something to write and communicate. And the problem with the whole education system in this country, the training of educators, is that they are trained in educational theory, not in a discipline.
Right.
And it's beginning, this state still doesn't, but it is beginning to be mandatory that to graduate with an education degree, you have to graduate with a degree in a discipline. And the education is on top of the discipline. But even so, it is so watered down what they're being taught because they're allowed to take. I ran a social studies education program for a while, and one of the things that I insisted was that the students take courses where these are future teachers, where they had to read primary sources, they had to know more than a textbook. But if they took courses in any other area except ones I was teaching, they got a textbook, they filled out the answers at the end of the textbook, at the end of the chapter, and that was their education in that. So I would get students in a methods course who had taken American history from someone who taught with a textbook, and they didn't know anything because, like the rest of the kids who took the courses, they forgot it on the minute they went out. So then they're going to go, we're going to put them in front of a classroom?
No, and I totally agree. we as bloggers, most people don't understand that if you're going to be a blogger, if you're going to be a decent blogger or a good blogger to a great blogger, you have to know your materials. And I keep hearing over and over again, well, we're teaching the kids critical thinking. That's where we're all oriented. They need to be able to think right. And I keep thinking, I can't be a blogger unless I have a rather large knowledge base, that I have to know lots about lots of stuff. I may not know it 6, 7 levels down, but I certainly know first, second, and third levels down.
Right.
And that's the only way, because you've got to be able to see those interrelationships
Yes.
to say, how does this system work? And you can't teach what's over here without knowing over here, like your example of the DNA.
Right.
Same thing with the math things that we keep coming up with from Common Core. There's not insufficient knowledge bases to ask those kinds of questions.
Right. This is what we say at Liberty Harbor too. The students who have been there a couple of years really ask good questions, and they are beginning to really see connections between what they learned in the biology class and what they're learning in the physics class, and they see how all this is beginning to work together. And sometimes they ask questions that we actually can't answer without spending a half hour, 45 minutes, giving them the rest of the story so that they could really understand the answer. And they're beginning to see this and do work on their own.
So going back to your original question, how do we educate the general public, the older generations that grew up with most of this, and I'm in that generation, although it's way back when. I've had to relearn a lot, and Steve tells the story that as he became more political, he had to go back to this primary stuff.
I did, I had to teach myself.
Right, and that's generally the best way.
Mm-hmm.
You see, this is my problem with today's kids. Even the ones who are graduating from college have not learned how to teach themselves. What they do is, if they have learned to ask questions at all, they can ask the question, and then they need somebody to guide them to find the answer. What we need to be teaching is, how do you figure out the question and go find the answer for yourself? I had a first-year student last week say, I don't know which papers I've written for the Western Civ class. I said, what do you mean you don't know which papers you've written for the Western Civ class? Well, could you look up which ones you have grades for? I said, no. You have a syllabus. You have end grade online, which ones are graded. And if you don't have copies of the papers in your computer, I'm not going to answer that question for you. That's what you need to learn for yourself. And this is what I hear from corporate people. The new hire comes in, does exactly what they're told, and then they're playing with their phone. And the boss comes and says, what are you doing? Well, you didn't tell me what to do next. So what we're teaching kids, and Common Core is perfect at teaching this, here is what you need to do. You need to wait until somebody tells you what to do next.
And that's right. And our other friend that writes the Invisible Surf Scholar blog refers to it as the destruction of the axe-maker mind, the removal of all deductive reasoning capability.
Right. Yes.
And just learning to do what you're told.
Right.
We're back to the John Dewey system of education
for
a workforce cog.
But it is. And it's very clear that the progressives have been on a tear to make sure they have a workforce that can be controlled.
Yeah.
And they say it over and over and over. So, and we don't want you to listen to your parents. We want to change what you know from your parents. Woodrow Wilson said that. The goal of education today is to separate you from your parents.
Well, that's been the goal of progressivism altogether,
right.
Is to completely shred any foundational attachments we have to our history,
right.
to traditional values, so that they can remake society of our own. That's why we're called extremists, because we refuse to let go.
Right.
It's really what it comes down to. We refuse to let go. Because without being moored to something substantial, anything is possible. And we've already seen what happens in the last century, what those kinds of things can be. And it's not a good outcome.
Well, without tradition, our kids, and anyone without tradition and understanding the traditions, you really are lost. You've had the whole base ripped out from under you.
You can put it on a very simple scale. Sometimes my kids will hear something on the radio or TV or online, and they have no context.
Right.
They don't know why it's funny. I'll just start laughing, and they'll be like, they'll look at me, and then I'll explain it to them, and then they'll go, oh, yeah, that is funny. But when you're talking about history, you're talking about traditions, you're talking about government, you're talking about the risk of tyranny, not having that context completely changes your ability to address what's in front of you. That is,
well, the tremendous upset over unemployment today. And I agree. It's really bad to have the unemployment. It would be wonderful if we could have almost perfect employment. But if you know the 16th century, when the Reformation took place, and the split between the two churches, the unemployment rate hit 50%. Queen Elizabeth was the first monarch to put in vagrancy laws because so many people were hanging out on the street with no addresses. And then it became that the doors of the city were closed, literally the key to the city, the doors of the city were closed to all those people who could not show that they had an address, place to spend the night. So if you want to know what to do with 50% unemployment, why don't we go back and look at what was going on in the 16th century?
Shut them out to live off the land.
But yeah, because what we have now at even if you say it's 13 or 14 is nothing compared to what people were dealing with then.
Or look at the labor participation rate.
Right.
How low it is.
And they're going to take another 4% off of that.
And Dr. McCaughey is going to be calling because she's not here yet.
Yes.
And we'll be doing
She is located appropriately opposite IRS Andover, Massachusetts, which will be part of the conversation. And Skip's going to call her now.
All right. Well, Dr. Cooper, thank you so much for coming in and spending some time with Grok Talk, and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
From the CNHT studios in Concord, New Hampshire, just a few blocks from the New Hampshire State House, this is
Grok Talk.
This Throwback Thursday episode of Grok Talk was originally recorded on February 15th, 2014. Our guests were LFGC President Richard Olson, Dr. Julianne Cooper, and Dr. Betsy McCaughey. The ads and promos you hear were running regularly in early to mid-2014. Segment breaks have been moved or edited to fit our 2016 programming format.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
All aboard. This is Grok Talk, brought to you by the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers and those of us who blog at granitegrok.com. We would like to welcome you to the last segment of this week's program. It is the day after Valentine's Day, so I hope everybody had a great Valentine's Day. We're hoping you're all happy, smiling, and full of chocolate and candy and going, oh, why did I eat all of that stuff?
Hearing that bumper music brings back memories.
Oh,
I played the guitar in high school, and I can play that lick quite well.
You can?
As Professor Reeder can as well.
Yes.
And I used to play that Reeder, and I used to play that rip, and it would be interrupted by my father thumping down the hall going, turn that down!
Right. Well, we're about to roll in here. Let's get Skip on to introduce the doctor.
Yeah, and the crazy train. I gotta, next time we do that, just let me know and I'll turn it off so we don't have to listen to this. Very professional show. That's okay. Our current guest, Dr. Betsy McCaughey, knows all about our professional show. Dr. McCaughey, how are you doing today?
I am so glad to be on the phone with you as I'm barreling up Route 93, heading toward North Woodstock. And I'm going to be talking tonight about the importance of defeating Jean Shaheen and taking the U.S. Senate for the freedom-loving majority.
Wrong button. Ooh, easy there, dude. Absolutely right, because, you've been talking about health care. We have your latest book here, Beating Obamacare 2014. You've been on Fox News talking about this, and the things that have come out this week are just absolutely nuts about the lawlessness that has arrived with Obamacare. And I'm just so grateful that you're willing to come around and talk to everybody. But you're right about Jean Shaheen. She took a marketplace that had over a dozen competitors, all offering different kinds of health insurance, and with her SB 11 bill, chopped it down to about 1.5, and then continued on at the national level to where here in New Hampshire we only have one health care provider. And Dr. Betsy, thanks for coming on with us.
Well, thank you. And the real issue here is the lawlessness that you underscored just a moment ago. I've got the Obama health law right here in front of me, but what the president is rolling out now bears very little resemblance to the law that Congress passed in 2010. He's mangled and distorted it. Literally over half the deadlines in the law have been ignored. The employer mandate has been delayed twice. He's granted a huge number of waivers, 1,472, to certain companies and unions. They don't have to obey the rest of the law the way most Americans do. And he even weaseled through that a special subsidy for members of Congress who were supposed to enroll in Obamacare. The thinking behind this is that if it's affordable for them, it's affordable for the rest of America. But even though they earn a base pay of $174,000, they got cold feet at the end and decided they weren't going to enroll in Obamacare unless we, the people, picked up the tab. So those are some of the examples of how the president has grossly violated the law over and over again. And that's what's really at stake here in November. It's not just slowing down Obamacare. It's holding the sword of impeachment over this president, this lawless president's head. And if we have a sufficient majority of freedom lovers in the Senate, people who revere the Constitution, they can take a nice walk down Pennsylvania Avenue and go visit the president and remind him what will happen if he doesn't obey the law.
That would be wonderful, and it would also be wonderful. Okay, sorry. That would be wonderful. It would also be wonderful if just a few Democrats, realizing that this is unconstitutional, either to save their behinds or out of honesty, I don't put much store on the latter, joined in the move to impeach. But go on.
That is so important because, in fact, it's very unlikely that the Republicans would win a two-thirds majority, which would be necessary to actually convict the president of high crimes and misdemeanors. But there must be some Democrats who agree with us that in this country the rule of law is king, not Mr. Obama.
And there's one more thing I want to just put in from this week's developments, which is if you own a company between 50 and 99 employees, you're subject to a special carve-out where you may get to extend the mandate a little further, but you're under all sorts of threats and penalties of perjury to swear that you didn't get under 99 by laying people off because of Obamacare.
Yes, I happen to be parked right across from the IRS as I'm chatting with you, and it's a reminder of how dangerous the Obama administration's plans for us are. They're nefarious plans. Because, number one, this employer mandate delay is not really a delay. Those employers who don't offer insurance can wait. They get a delay. But the vast majority of mid-sized employers who currently offer insurance under these regulations announced last week will have to continue to offer insurance. And they won't have the option of offering the more affordable plans they may have provided in the past, because I've spoken with many insurance companies this week. They're not rewriting those plans anymore. So these employers are going to be forced to offer the more expensive one-size-fits-all Obamacare plans. There's no practical delay in the employer mandate. What you just described is hush money in return for signing that statement under oath with the penalty of perjury that they are not laying off people or reducing hours in response to Obamacare. They will be spared from a $3,000 penalty if one of their employees goes to the exchange for what they consider more affordable health care. But here's the rub. this is a way of silencing employers who have been so vocal in their concerns that Obamacare makes it impossible for them to run their businesses. And this is a way of silencing them until after the election.
Well, that was...
What?
Oh, I'm sorry, Skip.
And this is one of the things that is so pernicious about what is going on. We talked earlier about in the show where different people are being forced to become government agents. For instance, if you go to see your doctor, you're going to get those Obamacare questions that you're supposed to answer. And my first comment is always going to be, so now you work for the government, and I expect to get the deer in the headlights response from that, because I don't want to answer those questions. Here with this mandate that you will not diss Obamacare, this is really beyond the pale. And you're right, you can't impeach him because the Democrats are never going to have less than a third of the senators. They're not going to we've gotten so highly hyper-partisan that it's protect the party regardless of what's right for America. The question is who's going to have the standing to be able to stand up to run this through the court system, and who's going to have the money to actually try to run this through the court system to protect us from government?
Well, I do believe that in the end there will be some Democrats in the United States Senate who will watch as this president comes closer and closer to an all-out attack on our constitutional rights, and who will remember their own oath to support the Constitution, that we may, in fact, be able to get those votes. But the purpose of beating Jean Shaheen this year is to just have a majority in the Senate that moves us closer to being able to have that conversation with the president. And I have to tell you, some of the things that Senator Shaheen has done in the last week should cause anyone in New Hampshire, regardless of their partisan views, to worry. For example, she spoke out in support of the president's nefarious plan to increase the powers of the IRS to police political thought and political action.
And that's really interesting because we've seen in New Hampshire that the Democrats in the House have put through legislation which essentially nullifies the detention portions of the NDAA. In other words, on actual civil liberties, you can get Democrats to vote for something. And so if Jean Shaheen is perceived as taking away civil liberties, you can get Democrats maybe not to actually vote against her, but to stay home like conservatives did for bad Republican candidates.
Well, that's very important. And in addition, last week she also called the discussions of America's mounting debt, quote, a manufactured crisis. I would say she's one of the spendaholics in Washington responsible for that increasing debt.
Oh, it is a manufactured crisis, but it's manufactured by socialists of both parties.
Well, the fact is the debt is very real, and it will burden our children and grandchildren. Government is clearly becoming far too expensive. You know, when I looked at what's happened under the Obama regime, where federal spending has now reached 24% of GDP, and you add on the state and local, it's 42% of GDP. Imagine government spending sucking up 42% of everything all of us produce going to work every day. 42% of the fruits of our labor. Do you get 42% of your happiness from government?
No, I don't think that that's true. But you raised the other thing that we wanted to talk to you about, this recent OMB study where 2.3 full-time equivalents, basically of jobs, is just going to vanish. And now they're saying, well, now you have the freedom to choose not to work.
Job lock. They're freeing us from job lock.
Job lock, yeah, that's there is a sense of truth in that, because a lot of people stay at the jobs because of the health benefits. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Or one person, I saw that as a budget committee where moms would come in and work part-time for the school system, and their benefits far outstripped the amount of salaries that they were getting. And that way their husbands could go out and try entrepreneurial jobs. So there is a bit to that. But at the same time, to try to put the spin on to say, well, now because other people are going to pay the subsidies for you, you get to stay home and do nothing. You have the freedom to do nothing if you want. How fair is that to the rest of us?
It isn't fair. In fact, fact, what it means is that the rest of us have to work harder and longer to pay for that freedom. And the fact is, I think it's wonderful when people feel free to make a decision to become a writer, a dancer, an early retiree, but not if it means the rest of us shoulder a bigger burden. We're all willing to help those who are disabled, who are unemployable, who are destitute for some reason, but not able-bodied people who want to put their feet up.
I think that we want to create a situation where we get rid of the job lock in Washington, D.C.
Amen. Term limits would do that.
We're going to take a quick 60-second break, and we will be right back, so stay with us. Hang on.
Rock Talk.
Okay, we're back. How'd you like that, Ed? We're having a lot of fun here. Okay, Dr. Cooper had a question for Dr. McCaughey. I'm going to turn your microphone on.
This is Julianne Cooper from Liberty Harbor Academy, and I...
Oh, so nice to meet you.
Yes.
I've heard so many great things from JP
yes.
about Liberty Academy. Yes.
Well,
very eager to see it.
Yes, and I guess we're going to get together at some point here. JP is going to do that. But I wanted to throw in something about this point about not working. Throughout history, our dignity, our sense of who we are as a human being comes through what we do, our work. And if we are creating an atmosphere where people are expected not to work, then we are literally taking another piece of the dignity away from our individuals. I mean, Common Core is doing it. The whole Obamacare thing is doing it. And now this idea that you shouldn't work or you don't need to work actually takes away identity and dignity from the people who are stuck in that place.
I so agree. And it wasn't a last-minute excuse devised by the Democrats to explain the loss of jobs. All along, Nancy Pelosi and others have been saying people shouldn't have to work to get health benefits. They should be able to get them whether they're employed or not. And the notion is that those who do work will have to work harder and pay higher taxes. Nobody's discussing exactly what it costs each time someone chooses not to work, goes to the Obamacare exchange, and signs up for subsidized health care. But it's costing $5,350 for each of those decisions, and for a family, about $20,000. $20,000 imposed on taxpayers.
Well, I have another question because I want to say thank you for sending the latest version of your book, Beating Obamacare, version 2014. And I do want to swing over to that and change the topic for a second because I do want to know what is different about this version versus your previous version, which I also read. And my other question associated with that is, because Obama is changing this so quickly, I hate to say it, but is this really out of date at this point, and will it get even worse next week?
That's a really good question. And you put your finger on the answer, which is that the health reform you see rolling out now bears almost no resemblance to the Affordable Care Act. And so I had to write a new book to update everyone on what's actually being done, but also to explain how to avoid some of the landmines until we can get rid of this law and replace it with something better that truly helps the uninsured. For example, if you're a baby boomer and you're in your late 50s or early 60s, you should line up your doctors now, your oncologist, your cardiologist, your internist, even if you're healthy, because if you wait till you turn 65 and go on Medicare, you won't find a doctor willing to take you on as a new patient. That's how little doctors are going to be paid under Medicare because of the cuts to Medicare under Obamacare.
Well, I've noticed that even my son's family all got respiratory problems and had to go to either the ER, and one of the littlest ones spent 3 days up in Dartmouth-Hitchcock, which is one of the great teaching hospitals here in New Hampshire, because she was really in a bad way. But my son tried to get in with my doctor and was turned away. And I will tell you what I think is very strange, and I've said this before. The last time I saw him, I said, well, what do you think of Obamacare? from your position as a doctor. And he said, well, I think it's great that 50 million more people are going to now have access to health care. And I very wisely refused to mention that he had the sign in his receptionist window that said, we are no longer accepting Medicaid patients.
Right. Well, in fact, also, you may have noticed it when you went up to Dartmouth Hitchcock. If not, you will certainly be noticing it soon if you go to a hospital. If you're planning on going to the hospital and you know it for a hip repair, a knee repair, something pre-scheduled, try to cobble together enough money for a private duty nurse, at least for the first night, because in response to the severe cuts in Medicare reimbursements to hospitals are already laying off nurses and spreading the care thinner. And that means when you push that button for pain relief or help, you're going to wait longer.
Wow. What other dangerous things to citizens? Because that's really what this is the danger of government trying to do one size fits all at a cut rate situation. What other things would we common folks normally run into that we're going to go, what the heck is going on here?
Well, you mentioned one before that I think is so important, and that's this. We all confide things to our doctor we wouldn't share with anybody else. And now doctors are going to be required, with real financial penalties in the future if they don't comply, required to enter your medical information in an interoperative electronic database that will be seen by thousands of eyes, not only other medical professionals, but other types of people as well. So if you're going to talk to your doctor about something truly personal, and most of us do, ask your doctor about keeping 2 sets of books. Your doctor will not be surprised, because doctors have taken a Hippocratic oath to keep their patients' medical information private.
I have been reading about a doctor in Arkansas who left the system to do cash for service because he didn't want to have to deal with all this. How much of this do you think we're going to see? We're going to see a lot of professionals leave this whole mess and just exchange cash for services?
I actually think
well,
sorry.
Go ahead.
I actually think so, because we're seeing an increase in the number of walk-in clinics, pay for service, the simple stuff, the flu jabs and so on. Quick care is becoming cash for service. If you don't have insurance, you just go in and pay. And I just wanted to quickly mention the other side of the coin with the hospitals. As Obamacare bites, the state's reimbursements to hospitals for uninsured patients is simply going to vanish, and that's going to further squeeze those hospitals. Go.
Yes, in fact, Richard Foster, the chief actuary of Medicare, he's now retired, but he warned Congress twice during the hearings on the Affordable Care Act that these cuts to Medicare are so severe, about 15% of hospitals will go out of business. They'll be forced into the red, and other hospitals will definitely lower the standard of care, particularly the access to nursing care.
Yeah, and I noticed. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Seniors bear the brunt. There's a provision in this law, 3000A, Section 3000A, that awards bonus points to the hospitals to spend the least per senior.
Yeah, that's going to extend their lives, and it's going to keep your other organization for hospital infection deaths extremely busy, I suspect.
Well, all of these cuts to hospitals reimbursements hurt my cause of preventing infections, but more than that, this is a very targeted reduction in available care for seniors, and you'll notice that hospitals will are likely to stop now recommending rehab or post-hospital, post-acute care, going to a rehab after you've had a hip replacement or a knee replacement, because that's actually counted against the hospital's record. They get whacked for that.
Yes.
So imagine trying to get a hip replacement and not go to rehab.
It's ridiculous. This is Dr. Cooper again, but my son-in-law is actually an anesthesiologist. And as Obamacare was being debated, he said he and a number of his colleagues were discussing a sort of the concierge, leaving the hospitals and doing concierge. And I think talking to him and his colleagues, we're going to see a lot of that, which is probably good because people will then know what things cost.
Yes. Unfortunately, it's not, even if you go to a concierge doctor, it doesn't help you avoid the lower standard of care when you finally get to the hospital.
Okay. A question along the same lines, though. Government tries to set one set of rules for everybody, and unfortunately they're not smart enough to understand how other people are going to find nooks and crannies to escape to get out from underneath this, like Dr. Cooper just brought up. My question to you is, have you been hearing anything about the idea that, well, if you want your license, you can keep your license to practice, but only if you give so much free care, or only if you do this, or only if you do that, and those are the things that government tells you to do. Are you hearing about anything about that, and any pushback from doctors that are going to say no more?
It hasn't happened yet, but Dr. Mark Siegel, who's a medical correspondent at Fox, suggested the other day that it may happen. And it would be very similar to what the IRS did last week when they told employers, well, you can avoid the penalty this year, but only if you sign an agreement that you're not going to tell anyone what the impact of Obamacare is on your business. Can you imagine Big Brother coming in and saying, well, you didn't have a legitimate reason to lower your labor costs. You didn't have a legitimate reason to move that person to part-time or move this person to another office. That's exactly what's happening in every aspect of the Obama administration, not just health care. I'm particularly concerned about health care because here they've actually put it into the statute. Take a look at Section 1311 H1B, which for the first time in history, and I know Dr. Cooper, I'm sure, has looked at this, for the first time in history, it empowers the Secretary of Health and Human Services to dictate how doctors treat privately insured patients. So even if you've gone out and bought a plan from Cigna or Aetna and paid your own premium, no subsidy from the government, the government's still going to be calling some of the shots.
Right, because they want to standardize care for everybody. But that wasn't where I was going. Going off from what Skip just said, isn't it actually the case in California already that they are beginning to pressure doctors to see a sufficient number of Medicaid patients, and they're starting to look at doctors' hours and say, basically, you're not putting in enough work here. You need to take on more government patients?
That may be true, and as I said, Mark Siegel from Fox has already suggested that licensing may become an iffy thing. You may have to do certain things to keep your license. It hasn't happened yet, but it could.
So this is, do you see anything else coming that we should be aware of? We got about a minute.
Well, there are going to be many, many more changes ahead. I predict in the next 3 or 4 months, despite the Treasury's announcement last Monday, many, many employers are going to be dropping health care coverage and sending their workers and their families to the Obamacare exchanges because the one-size-fits-all plan they are now required to offer as employers just costs almost twice as much in some cases as what employers have offered in the past. And it's going to be a rude awakening for people who have always had on-the-job coverage to see what a raw deal it is to have to pay for it on the Obamacare exchange instead. Much higher costs, much higher deductibles, and much less access to the doctors and hospitals you want to use.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, it really comes down to so many people having to suffer at the consequence of this law before they all stand up. But, I mean, by then it's probably going to be too late. So we want to thank you very much for coming on the show with us. It's a shame you couldn't be here. It's a shame you have to sit across from the IRS. But we're glad to have you on, and hopefully next time we'll get you in the studio.
Look forward to seeing you.
All right, Dr. McCaughey, thank you very much for being with us this afternoon, evening, day.
Show. It's a real public service.
Thank you so much. We'll have a good day. All right, that was the end of that. We're going to wrap it up here as people take off headsets and things get done. And, we're still working on some technical stuff, and we'll keep ironing these little bumps out in the road, but we want to thank you all for listening to Grok Talk today. I'm here with Skip Murphy, and we hope you have a great weekend. Enjoy the snow if you're in New England, and try to stay warm if you're someplace else.
Absolutely. Have a good week, folks.
This Throwback Thursday episode of Grok Talk was originally recorded on February 15th, 2014. The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of CNHT, GraniteGrok.com, this station, or anyone else for that matter.